Hey folks, welcome to another exciting edition of This Ain't No Game. This week's movie is Silent Hill. Now this is probably the movie with the most cinematic pedigree of anything that we've seen so far. It was directed by Christophe Gans, who is a French director who directed this crazy kind of like historical fantasy horror movie called Brotherhood of the Wolf that banked a lot on style and was also largely incomprehensible. Which makes him a perfect candidate to do a Silent Hill movie. Also, screenplay was written by Roger Avary, who was a writing partner of Quentin Tarantino's back in the day. So, coming into this, you think, okay, we've got a good pedigree for this movie. And it starts off pretty strong also. It tells the story of this couple, Chris and Rose, and their adopted daughter, who keeps on sleepwalking and having these horrible nightmares that she doesn't remember, where she wakes up screaming, "Silent Hill! Silent Hill!" So they need to figure out, like, what is this? What is haunting our adopted daughter, and what's driving her crazy? So Rose takes the daughter, runs off to Silent Hill, and then promptly loses her, which kind of a bad move, really. So then has to spend the rest of the movie either running towards what she thinks is her daughter, or running away from the crazy monsters that are in Silent Hill. Now, the Silent Hill games bank a lot on kind of weird ambiguities and just obscure things that you can't quite see out of the corner of your eye. It's not a lot about big jump scares or anything like that. And in this regard, like, the first half of Silent Hill, the movie, is spot on. You don't really know what's going on. She's walking around this abandoned town, and there's like ash falling from the sky because there's been this underground fire in this town for like 30 years or something. So it's still and it's silent. It's really, really eerie. And they really capture that, as well as kind of the twisted, messed up monsters that populate the Silent Hill games. There are actually monsters that you're going to recognize straight from the games. Pyramid Head is there. There's the nurses. There are other elements, like you get little radio static that you hear on like the car radio at points in the movie, or on Rose's cell phone that she carries around her neck. And a lot of times she is in the darkness, which comes randomly in this movie. There is just some force that just causes Silent Hill to turn dark, and then suddenly there's this crazy nightmare version of Silent Hill that's there in the place of the empty town. And all this stuff is really well produced. It looks really good, and it looks really faithful to the source material. The problem is when characters start opening their mouths. The dialogue is often very hammy, and it's so cryptic that it's obvious that it was written to be cryptic.
The story isn't hers alone, but all of ours.
And it only gets worse as the movie progresses, because they start really explaining more and more about why this weird stuff is happening in Silent Hill, which really goes directly against what Silent Hill is all about. It's all about not really understanding the situation, not really having a direct cause and effect. But late in the movie, they basically sit you down for a good 7 minutes and say, okay, check it out. Here's what's going on. Let's take a look at a small clip of that right now.
You did it. Your reward is the truth. Did you see that Alessa was a good little girl? Even though nobody looked at her that way. Their parents told them she was bad. She didn't have a father like they did.
You have brought sin amongst us. The faithful must gather in judgment, for we are called to purify this field.
What the fuck is going on?
As eerie as Silent Hill can be at times, largely because of the early lack of information that you have, there's not really a ton of tension, and whenever they do go for jump scares, they don't really have much effect. There are a couple of really graphic, gory scenes, such as one where a girl gets her skin ripped clean off by Pyramid Head, which is pretty gnarly. I will say, though, that the movie kind of redeems itself in its final moments after it indulges in all of this like pseudo-religious nonsense about why Silent Hill is the way it is. By then just having kind of the main antagonists or really the protagonist. It's hard to say, really. But she comes up and decides to murder everyone in this grand gesture of psychic barbed wire and blood.
What the fuck is going on?
You know, I'm not really that big of a fan of the Silent Hill games, mostly because I don't like that style of gameplay. But I've always appreciated, at least from a distance, kind of the aesthetic and the style of them, the way that they try to be creepy and eerie and unsettling. And I think for most of its run, Silent Hill the movie is pretty successful in emulating that. It's just when it kind of diverges from the Silent Hill formula that it really falls apart. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of This Ain't No Game. As always, I'm Ryan Davis, reminding you that if the light is green, the trap is clean.
Tell him about the Twinkie.
What about the Twinkie?